there's the mention of what you call secondary oral learners, who are people who have had the ability to read and write and were becoming oral learners, but after they became literate, but due to technological influences such as TV, radio, and you guys mentioned cassettes, but I mean, whatever that digital equivalent
whatever
is.
that is.
Yeah. And what do we do with this? Because you're saying that basically people are becoming illiterate right in front of our eyes in a way, right? Am I wrong in that?
Not totally. So
Okay.
talk about preference, right?
Okay.
So
okay.
they are not illiterate, they're literate, but they prefer to learn and be transformed through oral means as opposed to print means. So I have students that say to me often something like this: man, I love to learn. I just don't like to read. Is there any other way that I can learn? Well, guess what happens? Technology has shifted their preference, not intentionally, but towards this oral medium versus a print medium. And I see that in my family. Like if you ask my kids, would they rather read a book about Winston Churchill or watch a video about Winston Churchill? What do you think they're going to say? Man, they're going to take the video every time. And it's not a conscious decision, right? But what's happening is due to technology, people are preferring to receive information and be transformed through these digital means like video, story, even like a podcast like this, right? As opposed to reading a book that Travis writes about Apollos water. They want to hear on their way to work or whatever, they're going to hear you speak. So this isn't a conscious decision, but it's a shift. And I think it does us well as evangelists to understand this pedagogical shift and therefore move away from some of the print means and move into some of the digital means for sharing our faith.
It's funny to me that we start with hieroglyphics on tablets, we move to alphabets, then we're doing all this reading, and then we go back to emojis, which are basically hieroglyphics on tablets. It's just funny to me how cyclical things are culturally speaking over time, and this orality, as you mentioned, how that shift is occurring. We had Esteban Shed on the show, who is with a ministry called Streetlights, and they were doing ministry in the inner city of Chicago. And one of the things they noticed was that the young men there had a very hard time reading. Mm-hmm. And even with like an ESV Bible, it was just a little too advanced for them. And even with the NLT, they had a hard time. So they took the New Living Translation and they put it to hip hop music. Mm. And the kids picked it up then. Yeah. That's just illustrating the change that you're talking about, because we do see a culture that is shifting and going toward more orality preference in how that they do things. And I would agree with you, because my kids are the exact same way. But when I look at the different worldviews, back to that for a moment, and you even say this, like if people come to us from a different worldview and ask us to pray for them, you mentioned that we should. If we're interacting with people, we're sharing, and they need something right then and there that we might just dismiss. They might say a sickness in the family. They might be an issue that they're facing, a crisis, some spiritual issue that we encounter. And I've encountered this after interacting with Congolese, where they had people that were oppressing them, spirits that were trying to get them. And it was so foreign to me and foreign to the people that I brought to meet them. They came from a cultural worldview such as mine. We have a tendency just to dismiss such things in the West. But you guys mentioned when you encounter that, pray for them, interact with them. Why is it so important to fill that void when they ask us to do something when it seems so foreign to us?
We're saying that Christ, the power of Christ, can fit into that worldview, and that the power of Christ is over every other power. So a lot of times we are thinking, we're thinking in very empirical terms. And so the fear-power worldview does not lend itself to empiricism or a scientific method. And those are the things that in the West we've kind of grown to trust. We think, well, we need some type of proof. But here, for someone in a fear-power worldview, if you say, the proof for them is this, I'm going to pray for them that they'll have a safe trip, and they come back, they've had a safe trip. That's the proof. You go, well, come on, guys, that could be because of anything. And so that connection, for a lot of times, let's shift it to something a little more concrete. If someone has a sickness and they say, would you pray for me in this sickness? And so you pray for them. Well, in our mind, in our empirical mind, we are thinking, if I pray for A, then B should happen. They should get healed of that sickness. But for someone in a fear power worldview, a lot of times, if they have a sense of God's presence and of God's love and of God's acceptance, you see, all of the spirit and material world are intermingled. And they're going, that is an answer to the prayer. I feel loved and accepted and seen in a way that I've never felt. Now, if they also want to get healed, clearly they want to get healed. And that's a manifestation of the power of God. And that happens all the time, for people. But I think a lot of times we are looking for that one-to-one equation, but there's other stuff going on that that's outside the realm of the way that we normally think.